Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to Section 1, Lesson 6. Section 1 is all about letters, and today's lesson is going to be the last lesson in Section 1. And today we're going to talk about and start to learn about compound letters and what are the four forms that letters can take in compound format. So let's get started. On the agenda today, I'm going to do a quick review of what we learned in the previous lesson, not plural, singular. We're going to do the warm-ups as usual. I'll give you a quick intro of the differences that there are between the Arabic script and how it's written versus the Latin script, which is the English script, and how it is written. And in the instructional part, I will show you the four forms of each letter and what those look like, and recognizing each letter in its compound format, what that means. And don't worry if you don't know what that means, at the end of the lesson you will. There is going to be, and then I'm going to assign a lot of varied exercises, meaning that the exercises are, I'm going to say assign for about 4 exercises, because this is, even though the instructional might be quick, the exercises are what's going to help you to get perfect in recognizing these letters in their various formats. And finally, wherever I have included and whatever I'm going to include in the self-test, I will point that out during the instruction. Okay, review of the previous lesson. We learned 8 letters last time: Qaf, Kaf, Lam, Mim, Noon, Ha, Wa, and Ya. So the 2 letters that you see in front of you are Qaf and Kaf. Let's go with the letter Qaf first, that you see on the right-hand side. The letter Qaf is a consonant, and it is similar to the letter Q, but not quite. It is a kind of, kind of throaty. It is a tongue letter, but the throat is involved in pronouncing it. The letter is Qaf. The letter is Qaf. On the left-hand side, the letter you see is the letter Kaf. The letter is Kaf. The letter Kaf is a consonant, and it is identical to the letter K in the English language, with the exception of that the K has a characteristic exhalation. It's ka. This is not a kaf. This is a kaf. Not a kaf, but a kaf. Not a kaf, but a kaf. If you go back to the previous lesson video, you will remember how to pronounce this letter. This letter is a consonant, and this letter is also a tongue letter. Moving on, the next 2 letters that we learned were Lam and Mim. Let's go over the Lam letter first on the right-hand side. The letter Lam is a consonant, and it is a tongue letter. The letter Lam is identical to the letter L in the English language. There is absolutely no difference between the letter Lam and the letter L in the English language. And this letter is a consonant and a tongue letter. The letter Mim on the left-hand side is a letter that is pronounced from the lips. It is a consonant, and it is identical to the letter M in the English language: Mary, Mike, master, monkey, meme, ma. The M sound is identical to the sound of the letter meme in the Arabic language, and this letter is a lip letter, or a lips letter, plural, and it is a consonant. Next, we went over the letter Noon. The letter is Noon, the one you see on the right-hand side. The letter Noon is also a consonant, and it is a tongue letter. Actually, hang on one second. I may have... Oh, no, I'm correct. I'm on the right hand. I'm on the right track. The letter Noon is also a tongue letter, and it is identical to the sound of the letter N in the English language. N, Noon, Noon, N. Nancy, Knee, nose, Nick, all these words starting with the letter N. It's identical to the letter N, and it is a consonant and a lip letter. The letter Ha, sorry, not a lip letter. I think I just said lip letter. It's not a lip letter, my fault. It is a tongue letter. The letter Ha, the letter you see on the left-hand side, is a letter that is pronounced from the throat. It is a consonant, and it is identical to the sound of the letter H. Hate, heat, home, hit, ha. All these letters are identical to the letter ha. In the English language, the letter H is identical to the letter ha, and the letter ha is a consonant. The next 2 letters we learned in the previous lesson was the letter wa and the letter ya. These are both long vowels in the Arabic language. One of 3 long vowels in the Arabic language, the first being the alif, and these are the next 2, the wa and the ya. The wa, let's go over that one first. The wa is a vowel, and it is pronounced from the lips. You pout your lips and you say wa. It is identical to the letter like W in the English language, the sound of the letter W, waste, wig, water, wa. But it is not similar or not identical to the letter V, victory, viper, vix, all these letters with the words with the letter V. It's not the same. The letter W is what you want, not the letter V. And this makes this vowel, the letter we, makes the oo sound, or the 2o sound, the oo sound. In the vowel sound, it's oo. And the next letter that we learned was the letter ya. It's pronounced from the oral cavity, and it is the long vowel in the third long vowel in the Arabic language. Its sound is the two-letter E, the 2E sound, that's the letter ya. And it is a long vowel in the Arabic language, and it's identical to the letter Y and the sound of the letter Y in the English language as well. Yankees, young, ye, yes, all these words with the letter yeah, sorry, not yeah, but the letter Y, are identical to the sound of the beginning of the sound of the letter yeah. But when it's in its vowel format, its sound is the 2E sound, which is E. Okay. And that was what we did for the previous lessons. That was the end of the review. Next is we have the warm-ups. Please go watch the warm-ups video, and please don't skip the warm-ups. I hope that you've been doing your warm-ups. Please don't skip them. They're important to exercise your nose, throat, mouth, chest, lips, tongue, to make sure that you are starting to pronounce the letters in the Quran correctly. Please watch. Please don't skip. It's important. Okay, instructionals for today. Let's start with, what is the difference between the Arabic script and the Latin script? The difference between the Arabic script and the Latin script is the Arabic script is written right to left, whereas the Latin script is written left to right. And I'm going to put this on the self-test. Notice that all the instructionals that I've done so far are written, because it's in English there, and you see the English is written in Latin script, it's left to right. However, Arabic is not written like that. Arabic is written right to left. And the Arabic script is written in compound format, whereas the Latin script is not. The Latin script is written in isolated format. And I'll give you an example. And this question is going to be on the self-test. And I'll give you an example of that you see on your screen right now. Let me find my mouse. There it is. Good. So I have written 4 words with the same letters in them. Pots, stop, tops. Stop, pots, and tops. Pots, stop, and tops. Notice that these 3 words, the letter P in the word pots, the letter P in the word stop, and the letter P in the word tops, is written identical. The letter P in the word pots appears at the beginning of the word. In the letter stop, in the word stop, it appears at the end of the word, and in the word tops, it appears in the middle of the word. But you can easily tell that this is the letter P, this is the letter P, this is the letter P. It's the same written because all letters are isolated. They're not written together. But the difference between the Arabic language and the Arabic script and the Latin script is this. The words that you see below, obviously, because in the Latin we went left to right, correct? In Arabic we go right from left. So we have these 3 words, and the words are, this word is rahab, this word is rahab, this word is bahar, and this word is harab. They're written with the same 3 letters. They're written with ra, ha, and ba. This is ba, ha, and ra, and this is ha, ra, and ba. All of them are written with those 3 letters, ra, ha, and ba. But notice in this word, the letter ra appears in its isolated format, and it's written like this. In this word, the letter ra appears at the end, it's written like this. And in this word, it appears in the middle, in its medial format, it's written like this. Now, notice that in the Latin script, the P or the O or the T is isolated and it does not differ. But another example in the word rahab, which means to welcome, the ba, this end format, it looks different than this format of the ba. This is also a ba. And this is another ba. This is the isolated format of the ba, form of the ba. Isolated ba, initial form of the ba, final form of the ba. So I will go over what is meant by isolated, initial, and final forms in just a second. But notice that this is a difference, that Arabic script is written in compound format, and this is what is meant by compound format, that letters can take 4 distinct forms. And those forms are as follows. In the compound format, they can be written in the isolated format, in the initial format, in the medial format, or in the final form, which means that a letter can be written 4 different ways. If it occurs isolated, it's written isolated. If it occurs at the start of a letter, it's in its initial form. If it occurs in the middle of a word, and it is in its wow, what a tongue twister, in the medial format. And when it occurs at the end of a word, it is in its final format. Isolated, initial, medial, final. Those are the 4, and this is going to be on the self-test. By the way, you have already learned all the letters in their isolated format. If you've been watching the videos in sequence, the video that I'm doing today is the 7th video, and you've learned section 1, lesson 2, 3, 4, and 5. You've learned all the letters, and those letters, the way they're written and the way they're written in those sections and lessons, they're written in their isolated format or isolated forms. Today, I'm going to talk to you and I'm going to give you all the letters in their initial, medial, and final forms. And I will give you each letter and in its isolated, initial, medial, and final form. So let's get started. So this is a letter in which its isolated form, which is the hamza. The letter is the alif or the hamza. And if you don't know the difference between the alif and the hamza, go back to section 1, lesson 2, and you will know. I covered that in there. This is the isolated form of the letter alif or the hamza. This is the initial form, and this is the medial form, and this is the final form. Notice that the isolated initial forms of the alif and the hamza are identical, and the medial and the final forms of the alif and the hamza are identical. And you will notice this a lot when I go through all 28 letters. Some letters have 4 different forms. Its isolated is different than its initial, is different than its medial, and it's different than its final. But some letters, its isolated and initial might be same, medial and final might be same. So let's go into the next letter, which is the letter ba. The letter is ba, and this is a prime example of a letter in which all 4 forms of the letter are different. On the left, we see the isolated form, which is the letter ba. This is the isolated form. This is the initial form of the letter ba, when it occurs at the beginning of a word. This is the medial form of the letter ba, when it occurs in the middle of a word, and when it occurs and is connected to other letters and appears at the final or the end of a word. It takes its final form, and this is the final form of the letter ba. Ba, if you remember, we've already done the isolated format in the previous lessons. This is the letter ba in its isolated format. Kind of similar to its final form, but not quite. It is connected. This is how it is connected to the previous word. Similarly, when it's in its medial format, it has a little, movement up here, the little rise, and the dot is written below it, and it's connected to the previous letter like this, and connected to the next letter like this. And this is the isolated form of the letter ba. I want to go back to the medial. I'm sorry, what am I doing? Oh yeah, okay. Now, this is another letter that you learned already. The letter is ta. On the left, you see it's an isolated format, very similar to the letter ba. It's written in 4 different unique formats or unique forms. Its isolated form is different than its initial, medial, and final forms. Next is the letter tha. It's another letter in which its isolated initial, medial, and final forms are written differently. Now, I'm going through this, through this instructional a little bit fast. The reason I'm going through this instructional a little bit faster is because you're not going to be able to do, or you're not going to get these 4 forms just from the instructions, just looking at this video. That is why I have, in the beginning of this lesson, I said that we have very differing and varying types of exercises, and I'm going to have you do those exercises to get this. I have created multiple study guides, multiple study aids for you, so that you can use those, and I'll have you do multiple exercises with them so that you start to get it. Even though the instructional is going to be a little bit fast, and if you want, there are other YouTube videos you can watch. It's not a problem. You can go watch those videos to, figure out what the isolated initial, medial, final forms of the letters are. But I'm going to go through this instruction a little bit quicker. So don't worry. There will be a lot more how-tos. I'm gonna upload like 3 or maybe 4 exercise videos related to this particular video. This is important. Next is the letter Jim. Jim. Notice the isolated form, the initial form, its medial and final form, and how they're written. Okay, next is the letter Ha. The Jim and the Ha are almost identical, so I'll switch between the two. Jim, Ha. Jim, Ha. Jim, Ha. So if you remember, Jim has a dot in it, or has a dot below it, whereas a Ha does not. So just remember, when it's Jim, it has a dot on it. When it's a Ha, it does not. Other than that, the 2 letters are almost identical in their isolated initial and medial format. This is the Jim, this is the Ha. Jim, Ha. Jim, Ha. Jim, Ha. Jim, Ha. No difference between the 2 as far as their writing is concerned. The only difference is their initial, medial, final formats. There's a dot on the Jim, there is no dot on the Ha. Same thing with the Kha. The Kha, the dot is above the letter, whereas in the Jim, the dot is below the letter, and it takes the exact same format as the Jim. Kha, the letter is above. Jim, the letter is below. Ha, there is no letter. Jim, letter below. I'm sorry, dot below. Ha, no dot. Kha, dot above. Ha, no dot. Jim, dot below. Kha, dot above. Next we have the letter Dal. The letter Dal, its isolated and initial forms take the same as the medial and final form, but you will notice that its sister letter, the letter Dal, this is 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 the letter Dal. Dal and Dal, Dal and Dal, Dal and Dal. Notice the letter Dal has no dot on it. Its isolated initial forms are the same. Its medial and final forms are the same. Whereas the letter Dal has a dot on it, and it looks almost pretty much identical to the form of the letter Dal, except that it has a dot on it. And the letter Dal also, its isolated initial forms are the same, and its medial and final forms are the same. So this is why the Hijri format, or the order of the letters that we memorized earlier, is important. The reason is that now you're starting to see that Dal Dal, Ra Za, and Jim Ha Kha, Dal Dal, Ra Za, the reason these letters are written like that is for this particular reason, is that it will become easier for you to remember their initial, isolated, and medial format. You just have to remember Dal and Dal look alike, Jim Ha Kha look alike. Whoops, I'm going in the wrong. Jim Ha Kha look alike. Jim Ha Kha look alike. Dal and Dal look alike. And next we have Ra, the letter Ra, and Za look alike. The letter Ra is isolated, and initial forms are the same. Medial and final forms are the same. And this is how it's written, except the letter Za, the next letter, its sister letter. Its initial, medial, and final forms are the same, written as the letter Ra. Its isolated is the same as the initial. Its medial is the same as its final, but it has a dot on it. So this is the letter Ra. This is Za. Ra, Za. Ra, Za. Ra, Za. Ra, no dot on it, z, dot on it. Ra, no dot on it, z, dot on it. So if you remember the ra, you will just know the only difference between its forms is that it has a dot on it. Next two letters are going to be the seen and the sheen. Seen and the sheen. Seen and the sheen. Seen and the sheen. The letter seen is written like this. Its four formats, the isolated, initial, medial, final, are written different from each other. And its isolated, initial, medial form and final forms are written identical to the letter sheen, except the letter sheen has three dots on top, and it's written like this. Seen, sheen. Seen, sheen. Seen, sheen. Seen, sheen. Seen, sheen. No dots, three dots. Seen, sheen. No dots in the seen, three dots on the sheen. Next we have the letter. Two sister letters are slod and bod. The letter slod and the letter bod. Slod, bod. Slod, bod. Slod, bod. In the letter slod, the initial, medial, final, isolated formats are written differently, and this is how they're written, except its twin letter is the letter bod, and it has a dot on it. Slod no dot, bod has a dot. Slod no dot, bod has a dot. Slod and bod. Next we have the letter ba and its sister letter va. Ba, va. Ba, va. Ba, va. The letter ba, its isolated and initial forms are the same, and medial final forms are the same. Along with the letter va, its isolated and initial forms are the same, medial final forms are the same, but the letter ba has no dot on it, the letter va does. No dot, dot. Ba, va. Ba, va. Ba has no dot, va has a dot. Ba has no dot, va has a dot. Next we have the two sister letters, ayn and ghayn. Ayn and ghayn. Ayn and ghayn. Notice all four forms of the letter ayn are written differently from each other. Same as ghayn, except ghayn has a dot on it. Ayn has no dot on it. Ghayn has a dot on it. Ayn, ghayn. Ayn, ghayn. No dot, dot. No dot, dot. Ayn has no dot on it. Ghayn has a dot on it. And we will go into a lot more detail, I promise, in the exercise videos of each letter and how it's written and its medial and initial final format, and how you can exercise your eyes to make sure that you start to recognize these forms. Next is the letter fa, the sister letters fa and qaf. Fa and qaf. Fa and qaf. Fa and qaf. Oops. The letter fa, its isolated initial, medial, and final forms are separate from each other, but the slight difference between the two, and you will notice, is that the qaf has two dots on it, whereas the fa has one dot on it. Qaf has two dots on it, fa has one dot on it, and it's written with a circle and then connected to the other letter. Fa has one dot, qaf has two dots. Fa, qaf. Fa, qaf, fa, qaf. And notice you've already learned the isolated formats of these letters, but just look at the subtle differences between the letter fa and its final form and the letter qaf in its final form, letter fa in its medial and initial forms, the letter qaf in its medial and initial forms. Next we have the letter kaf. The letter is kaf. And these are the four forms that it takes: isolated, initial, medial, final. Its isolated form is on the left-hand side. You've already learned it. Its initial form is written as you see. Its medial is written as you see. And its final form is very similar to its isolated form, except you connect it with the previous letter, like that. Next, we have the letter lam. The letter is lam. Its four forms, you've already learned the isolated one, the one that you see on the left, but its four forms are written different from each other. The initial is different from the isolated, medial, and final. And just wanted you quick look at it and moving on. Next is the letter meme. Also, its four forms are different from one another. You've already learned the one on the left, which is the isolated form. Initial, medial, and final. Initial, medial, and final forms. The next is the letter noon. The letter is noon. Its isolated form you've already learned on the left side. The initial, medial, and final are written different from one another. And this is the letter noon. This is the letter ha. The letter is ha. Its isolated form you've already learned about. But when it's written in its initial form, it takes two. It's basically create a circle and you cut it in half. That's what it looks like in the initial and medial forms. And in the final form, it's also different. So we will learn all about this letter in our exercises as well. Next is the letter wa. This is one of the two long vowels. And the isolated form you've already learned about. It's on the left-hand side. Its isolated and initial forms are identical to one another. Its medial and final forms are identical to one another. This letter is the letter wa. And finally, the letter is ya. The letter is ya. On the left-hand side, you see it in isolated format. Its initial, medial, and final forms are different, but its isolated form is almost identical, pretty much identical to its final format. And you will see examples of this, except when it's in its final form and not in its isolated form, it's connected to a letter from its from its beginning, because it's written right to left, and you connect it from the letter to the previous letter on the right. And these are the four forms of the letter ya. Special cases. There are special cases that are exceptions to the rules, and I will go over those cases next. The ta marbuta, alif maqsura, and alif qasira are special cases. I will go over the ta marbuta and the alif maqsura in the next set of slides. But the alif qasira will be covered in detail when I go over the movement marks when I begin section 2, which is going to be the next section we're going to be covering. Alif qasira will be covered with those movement marks. So today we're going to cover the special case of the ta marbuta and the alif maqsura. So let's get into the ta marbuta. This is a special letter in it that when it's written like the ha. So if you remember, let me go back to, notice that it's written like, don't forget the initial and the medial forms of the ha. It's written very similar to the isolated and the final forms of the letter ha. This is known as, let's go back. Where did you go? Oh, I'm going backward. Sorry. This is the initial, the isolated form of the ta marbuta, the initial form of the ta marbuta, the medial form of the ta marbuta, and the final form of the ta marbuta. Just one thing to remember, I'm going to put this on the self-test, that when you're reciting the Quran, and if you break your breath, basically you have to stop in order to breathe, you stop, but even though that it's at ta, it has two dots on it, it sounds like a ha when you break your breath. But if you don't break your breath, it sounds like a ta. So I will give you examples of this when I go into the exercise video, but the only thing that is going to be on your self-test regarding this particular letter is that if you break your breath, it sounds like a ha. Otherwise, if you don't break your breath, it sounds like a ta. And this is its isolated initial, medial, and final format. And don't worry, we will go into a lot more detail in the exercise video of what the ta marbuta is all about. The next exception that we see is the alif maqsura. The alif maqsura looks like a ya, but it's pronounced like an alif, and I will put this on the self-test. Now, I will not put the other two in the self-test, but definitely that question is going to be on the self-test. Looks like a ya, but pronounced like an alif. Most written conventions of the modern writing of the Quran, it includes a small alif on the ya to denote that it's an alif maqsura, that it should be pronounced like an alif, not like a ya. And it is only written at the end of a word, it does not take any other form. So it only has, the alif maqsura only has a final form. It does not have an initial, medial, or isolated form. It only has a final form. And I will go over 3 example words that you see on your screen right now. And I took these examples from Surah Taha, if you are interested in finding out where I took these examples from. These are 3 examples of the alif maqsura. The first word that you see on the right hand side, let me see if I can find my mouse. The first word on the right hand side that you see is litashqa. The word is litashqa. Litashqa. Notice this is the medial form of the letter qaf, and this is the final form of the letter ya. But this is an alif maqsura. The reason this is an alif maqsura is because when written, the alif, there's a small standing alif on top of it, letting you know that this is qaf and this is a ya. And when you combine the letter qaf and the ya, because the ya makes the 2e sound, you would think that this would be qi. But no, the word is tashqa, not qi, but qa, tashqa. The reason is that this is an alif maqsura, and because this is an alif maqsura, you add the standing alif on it, and you pronounce it like an alif, not a ya. That's why it's an alif maqsura. Next word we have is the word yakhsha. 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 This is the sheen and this is the ya. Sheen in its medial form and ya in its final form. Sheen in its medial, ya in its final form. But because this is has a standing alif on it, standing alif on it, on the ya, this is an alif maqsura. Alif maqsura. Alif maqsura. And though this is a sheen and this is a ya, so you would accept, because the ya is the sound of the 2-letter e, the double e sound, so you would think yakhshi, sheen and the ya, should it be yakhshi? No. The reason is because this is a dagger alif, or I'm sorry, not the alif maqsura, the standing alif is on top of it, and it becomes yakhsha. Not yakhshi, but yakhsha. Final example word that I have on my screen is al-ula. Al-ula. This is the medial form of the letter lam, and this is the final form of the letter ya. Lam and ya. Lam and ya. But the lam and the ya are combined, but you would think that the ya should make a double e sound, but it doesn't. This is al-ula. This is al-ula. But notice that this ya, this alif maqsura, this is not a ya, this is an alif maqsura, does not have a small tiny alif on top of it, just like these two do. The reason is that this particular one is an exception, and sometimes this is not written like this. But it's usually written at the end of a word or the end of a verse, and you will notice, and when it's pronounced, you will know that this word does not have, it's not pronounced like a uli, it's pronounced like a ala. And I will go into a lot more detail with the alif maqsura and examples when we go into the exercise videos. Okay, the exercises. For the exercises, I want you to open the Quran, and I'm going to assign 4 exercises to you. And the reason is that today's instructions, the only way you're going to get good at recognizing the different forms of the letters is with these exercises. The first exercise is, actually, you know what, maybe I should have put this in a different format. And I think I will upload the exercises in the form or in the order that I would like you to perform them. First, I want you to do the Qaida Nuraniya exercise, and I will include the link to the pages from Qaida Nuraniya. And for those of you who don't know, that's pretty much my first ABC book of Arabic. Qaida Nuraniya. Qaida Nuraniya is like my first ABC book of Arabic. And in that there is a section, or the second lesson, the second chapter is known as the chapter on Huruf al-Murakkaba, or compound letters, and making letters in their compound format. The reason I like this exercise and the way that it's done in Qaida Nuraniya is because in the Qaida Nuraniya, each word, each letter in its isolated format is written with a different color. What that is going to mean is, as soon as you see a different color, it is a different letter. Exactly. So as soon as you see a different color, you will see it you will know that it is a different letter. That's the first exercise that I'm going to upload. Now, the next exercise that I'm going to assign to you, I'm not going to upload an exercise video on this one. But what I want you to do is, and I'm going to include the link in the description below. There is a website, Quizlet.com. It has flashcards for the Arabic letters. And it asks you, or it displays to you the form, and it asks you to describe, and you can flip the card and it'll tell you if you have the answer correct or not. This will help you in recognizing the forms. Another exercise that you can do, and that I'm going to assign to you, is that I want you to write the letters in their 4 forms, and I will provide a guide. And in that guide, I will upload, as part of this lesson, the link is going to be in the description. I want you to try to write the letters that you see on your page, and just put the pen down and just trace them right on the paper. And see if you can write the letters in their 4 formats and trace them in the guide provided. I will provide the guide, or the link to the guide, or the exercise guide, in the description below. And I will also do this exercise in a video, and I will upload it as part of this lesson. And finally, and this is why I apologize, I should have put these exercises in their correct order. I want you to do these exercises in the order I'm describing, from bottom to top. So when I go and I upload the slide deck for this, I will change the order. I want you to start from bottom, Qaida Nuraniya, Quizlet, then writing the letters. And finally, I want you to open the Quran to the very first chapter, which is Surah Al-Fatiha. And this will also, I will provide an exercise video on this one. And I want you to try to read the letters in their 4 forms using this exercise guide. And what I mean by that is, when I provide the exercise guide to you, there's going to be a link to the exercise guide. In that exercise guide, I have, in Microsoft Word format, I have all 4 letters in their separate formats and written out what letter this is. So what I want you to do is literally print out those pieces of paper, that exercise guide, open the Mus'haf, and see which form of the letter it's taking, and see if you can correlate from the exercise guide into your Quran. And I will also upload an exercise video on how to do this particular exercise as well. The only exercise video I'm not going to upload is the Quizlet.com one. That's an exercise that you can do on your own. Okay. I will provide these links on the study aid links in the video description below. But the 2 study aids that I want you to start using, and that have been very helpful, are Quizlet.com / the link. I will provide this link in the description below as well, and www.quran.com. These are excellent study aids for you to use. In conclusion, what did we learn today? We learned the differences between the Arabic script and the Latin script. The Arabic script is written right to left, the Latin left to right. In the Latin script, there's only one form of the letters. They're all written in isolated format, whereas in the Arabic script, they're written in 4 forms: the isolated, initial, medial, and final. We talked about all the 4 forms of the letters. We went through them, and we went through some of the exceptions, and specifically the ta marbuta and the alif maqsura. This lesson ends section 1, which was going to be all about letters and their forms and how to pronounce them, how to recognize them. if you've gotten this far, now you have learned everything you need to know about recognizing letters in the Arabic language, how to pronounce them, how to read them, and how to recognize them in the Arabic language. In the next lesson that we're going to begin, or in the next section that we're going to begin, I'm going to start giving you, or I'm going to give you an introduction of diacritical marks. And what I mean by diacritical marks are we discussed this a little bit in the long vowel, the previous video, which is section 1, lesson 5, the alif, wa, and ya, and their associated diacritical mark, which is the fatha, dhamma, and the kathra. We'll go into detail and start going into detail about the different diacritical marks that are added to the Quran to make sure that it is pronounced correctly. So that's going to be the next section. Section 2 we're going to begin, and the section 2 is all going to be about diacritical marks. As part of the self-test, what I want you to do, and I want you to do it after you are done with these exercises. All 4 exercises, I want you to do them a lot. This is what you're going to do. But one thing that is definitely going to be is on the self-test is I'm going to ask the self-tester, and if you don't know what I mean by self-test and how the format of the self-test works, go watch the introductory video and you will know what I mean by the self-test. But what I will include in the self-test is I will ask the the self-tester, I will ask them to open a random page in the Quran. And I will ask them to assign some verses from that page to you. And during the self-test, you must recognize those letters. What I mean by that is this particular self-test, and this is an exception, every self-test, you know exactly what you need to do. But as part of this self-test, you will not know what page from the Quran might get assigned to you. I will ask the self-tester to open a random page in the Quran, and I will ask them to assign some verses, any part of that page they would like to you. And you must recognize the letters in that page. Not the diacritical marks. Diacritical marks come next. But you must recognize the letters just in the Quran that is going to be in your self-test. And the way that this self-test is, the way that you're going to pass this self-test is if you do these exercises repeatedly. If you do these exercises repeatedly, you will know the letters in their formats. So that is going to be, and pretty much I think I'm going to place like 90% of the emphasis on the self-test is going to be on this particular part of the self-test. You must know any random page. You don't need to know how to recite the Quran, but at the very least, you must recognize all the letters. I will ask the self-tester to assign some random verses to you, and you must at least recognize those letters written in any random page in the Quran. And that's going to be a major section of the self-test. And finally, if you enjoyed this video, if it was helpful to you, please like this video. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, leave them in the comments section below. I will read them. I will respond. And finally, go ahead and subscribe. If you've liked this video, I will continue to provide additional videos, and share this with your friends, and share this on social media if you like this video and help me spread. Jazakallah khair for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.